Zev, how's it
Hey, it
going?
worked. How you doing,
Yeah,
mate?
we did it.
Good, good.
Technology.
Finally. Only
Yeah,
taken us a half an hour to work it out.
that's funny. So Zev's coming to us from, you're still up at Mullumbimby, yeah?
Yeah, not far from Mullum, just in case I'm needed to get back there and get in between the community and the police again to try and. I wasn't really sure what I was walking into the other day. I just sort of felt the need, a bit of a call to get down there and help, and kind of threw
Yep.
myself under the bus when I put my hand up as police liaison. And yeah, you guys have probably all seen a bit of the footage from that, as much as a lot of it's been removed. Interesting day. We've got a bit of a stop due to a deal with the local area commander for Tweed Byron Shire.
Yep.
Sort of cut a bit of a deal with him that I'm having a meeting with him on Monday to try and negotiate the, how do I put it, rules of engagement. And
Yep.
yeah, he's given us his personal guarantee or word that there'll be no works commencing until after we've had this meeting. So
Yep.
the word of a policeman's not worth a lot to a lot of us, nor the word of the telcos. So there's still a vigil
Yeah.
happening down there. Guys have got a bit of a roster system going, so there's still a few crew down there and crew sleeping down there as well, just in case they try and pull a shifty in the night.
Yeah.
So part of the deal I had with the area commander was he gave me his phone number, and I told him he had my word I wouldn't share his phone number out. And the
Yep.
deal was that he gave me his word that there wouldn't be any work until Monday. So hopefully he keeps his word. I'll
Oh,
be able
yeah,
to
because
keep mine then.
his number out to 60,000 people, really. Not today.
Well, let's hope he keeps his word then, hey?
Yeah, yeah. I think you've got a bit of a cult following. I'm just watching the comments flicking along now. We've got some Zevs and we miss you and we love you. I don't know if it's your mum or your brother or something, but you've got a few people who like you out there. I think the big thing that you showed the other day, driving those five hours and getting down there to the group to try and help them out, is that sort of Aussie spirit that we sort of try and stand up and help each other. And I think that's really resonated with a lot of the people watching. And you spoke so eloquently when you were speaking to the police officers as well. And I think in a time where it's so stressful and people are quite fearful, it's people like that that make a big difference. We've got ZEV for PM getting put down in the chat zone as well. So we might get you into politics. So how, just
Yeah, maybe,
from your,
maybe.
from your experience, because you've been, on the cold face before, do you is there an action plan in place to like moving forwards with this movement up at Mullumbimby? Because quite a few people are seeing it as a bit of a tipping point. It could be the one that if we can get a win there, we can get a win around the rest of Australia, if not the world. So how do you see it playing out now, Zeb?
Really don't know. Depending on how we go with this meeting with the police, so waiting on some. I've asked them to chase up the info with Telstra because Telstra aren't too forthcoming with information for all of us lot. So I've
Yep.
asked the police if they can get that info on our behalf. Their concerns with all the COVID BS going on, as anyone who saw the footage kept saying, they kept telling me under the COVID laws, and I kept saying, well, they're not laws because there's no parliament
Yep.
sitting, which means they're not passing laws, and they can't pass laws without royal assent and proclamation certificates and commencement dates and three readings in parliament for it to actually be considered a law. So at the moment, we've got the health minister asking us all very nicely to stay home, and meanwhile, we've got Telstra being sneaky bastards trying to
Yep.
get in and do stuff while there's no one around and no one watching. And so, as I explained to the police, it's put us all at a massive impasse. Thank you. Cup of delivery. It's put us all at a massive impasse with the police and the rules and regulations around this because they're rules and regulations. They're not, in fact, laws. And this is one of the big things that I was trying to impart to the community when I was down in Mullen the other day, and again to the police, that it's not the law. Laws have requirements to be enacted as law, and none of this has taken place. Much in the same
Yep.
way as none of the nonsense with the 5G has taken place in the right way or been through due process or any of that sort of stuff either. So as I was chatting with the police, I told them, look, we've got this massive grey area. You guys are telling us that it's against the COVID laws. I'm telling you they're not laws because they're not. And
Yep.
we've got this impasse of the community here, and they're saying, oh, but we've got other members of the community complaining about community safety. And I'm like, well, we're all here for community safety because the corona thing will bugger off and go away soon, but the 5G won't. When the community's
That's
being bathed in that radiation 24/7, that's going to have a far worse effect than any patented bloody virus that's getting around out there.
That's so true, Zev. I think that's the big thing here is that they're using a pandemic or a problem or a virus or whatever you want to call it, whether you believe it or not. They're using it as a way to get this done covertly, and I think we're losing our rights left, right, and center. And you obviously know the law very well, and there's a lot of people out there that just don't understand the law, and that's where they're getting stuck.
Yeah, look, it's a lie. It's a giant deception. Most of what we're told and most of what most of us believe, and most of the people, anyone watching and in Mullum, what most people believe is the law actually isn't. We have rights, and rights are separate to the laws. No law has the power to remove our rights. It's a separate issue. Whether you're a religious person or not, whether you believe in God or not, there are God-given rights. We're born with them. It's something called divine law, and no magistrate, court, or police officer has the authority or the jurisdiction to remove our rights. The only way we lose our rights is when we get tricked and deceived into voluntarily giving them up. And this is where they play us with their legalese, which sounds a lot like English, but it's a completely separate language. Anyone watching, guys, get a copy of the Blackson Law Dictionary and look up some of the words in there that we all take as English, that when the police and the courts and the judges and magistrates use have a completely separate meaning. I've been environmental activism and human rights stuff for 20, 25 years now. I've learned a lot, through that time and through being arrested far too many times and having to go to court for it too. But I don't use a lawyer. I've beaten 90-something% of anything these bastards have ever thrown at me because I'm aware of my rights. I'm aware of how the law actually works as opposed to how we're told it works. And again, they're two completely separate bloody things. I encourage anyone watching or listening to this tonight, guys, do your research. Look up things like our Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia, a Declaration of Universal Human Rights. These are gravely important documents there that outline the difference between our rights and the law. It's called a Blackson Law Dictionary. Looking up in the comments there, guys, a Blackson Law.
Blackson Law,
and it's got some great terms in it and the terminology that the legal profession use. Its own language. It's actually called legalese. And it's where they trick us a lot, and it's where they do that with the tricking and the deception of that second language that sounds the same, that we get fooled and deceived into voluntarily giving up our rights. I think some of the guys have put up a little thing. I was giving a talk to the guys at Mullum about that, and on that note, explaining, guys, if you're at one of these protests, whether it's for 5G or logging or mining or coal seam gas or any of the others I've been involved with over the years, the biggest ploy that they have here is they'll arrest you for anything. They might come in on Tuesday and they'll arrest everyone for parting their hair on the left. On Wednesday, they'll arrest everyone for parting their hair on the right. They don't care if it holds up in court or not. The idea is to arrest people, place the charges on you, and once you've got the charges, they give you bail conditions. And if you sign these bail conditions, because the bail conditions 99% of the time will say you can't go back to the protest or you can't go within 5 kilometres of the protest. And so people fearful of being locked up will sign the bail conditions, hence being deceived into signing away their rights. And they can go home, sure, but you can't go back to the protest. And it's a massive ploy for the police and the courts and our corrupt legal system to be able to thin out the numbers at these campaigns. So when I do these nowadays, I tell everybody, do not sign the bail conditions. If the bail conditions say, here's 10 grand, a holiday in Hawaii and a cute blonde to keep you company, you say no, because it will also include not being able to go back to the protest. And that's how they thin our numbers. Now, for the viewers watching, I got privy to this information at a logging campaign. I won't mention the town or the coppers because I think I'm in the spotlight enough at the moment. But we're in there. I'd been arrested like 2-3 times a week here for weeks. And they kept giving me the same bail conditions. And I kept telling them, jamming up their ass, I'm not signing them. And I don't consent, like the guys are putting in the thing. I do not consent to this. It's a massive thing to know, guys. They had some real police work to do, so he threw me in his office while I had to do some proper police work rather than dealing with activists. And on his desk in the police office was the New South Wales Police Handbook and Guidebook on how to deal with protests and blockades and protesters. So I was in there for a good 20 minutes. He told me not to touch anything, but absolutely, I had a damn good read. Surprisingly, my name was in the book because I've been at this for a while, but I read up a bit on their procedures and policies, and that's where I found out about the bail condition thing. So after learning that, I knew not signing the bail conditions for that, because I didn't want to sign away my rights, was a good thing to do. But seeing that was actually part of their ploy, it was part of what goes out in the handbook to tell the police to do this, to come up with trumped up charges in order just to impose bail conditions to thin the numbers. So it's a massive thing to learn for people. Do not sign the bail conditions. And as I said to the guys in Mullum in the morning, you don't go to jail. They put you out the back of the cop shop or underneath the courthouse or whatever. Some of them, if they're close, are all linked up with tunnels and crap. It's bed and breakfast. Well, when you get used to being locked up enough times for activism stuff, you're out in the bush a lot too, rather than in town like we are in Mullum. For us, we're roughing it. Yeah, we're wearing swags and roughing it under. We're out in the bush hiding and living pretty rough sort of thing to be able to do it. So when we get put in for the lockup, we get a comfy bed, a hot shower. It's like a bed and breakfast for us, and we get to challenge the magistrates within a day or so. Yeah, well, because you're in there for that too. You haven't committed a crime, and you're in there because you refuse to sign the bail conditions. They generally try and rush you through the courts as expediently as possible. So normally you're only in there for, say, 1 or 2 nights at best. They've even had special hearings for us when they've been done on the weekends, and had a special hearing on a Saturday morning because they don't want to keep you in there for that. And you can challenge, they'll change the bail conditions. Example, with one of the logging campaigns, we got told they removed I can't go back to the protest off my bail conditions because the magistrate agreed I have the right to protest, and those bail conditions were erroneous to my basic rights. But they changed them to say that I was not allowed to block any traffic entering the forest instead of not being able to go back there. So I got done a day or two later for blocking a truck exiting the forest. And when the police tried to do me for my bail conditions, I was most adamant that the bail conditions were very strict, and they said I can't block traffic entering the forest. And the photographic and video evidence they had of me clearly showed that the truck was exiting, not entering. Therefore, I hadn't breached bail conditions. I still got arrested. They still offered me the same bail conditions that I couldn't go back. And I got locked up again for the 3rd time in a week. This is normal stuff for you guys who are doing this sort of stuff. Sometimes for weeks on end, this had happened. And every time the police would offer me the same bail conditions, and every time I'd refuse them, and I'd spend a night or two in lockup. And it's one of those things, guys. If you're going to do it, do not sign the bail conditions. It's super important.
Yeah, it's amazing to understand the law more, because what I think one of the big things you mentioned just then is your right to protest. And the problem with what's happening right now, and where it looks like corruption or whatever you want to call it, conspiracies are often the truth that gets out there. When they don't want it out there, it gets called a conspiracy. But the thought process that we can't protest, and that's why for me, that's our God-given right, is to stand up when we think something is unjust or unfair. The fact that we can't do it, and that the fact that when you are doing it, you're getting told you can't do it because of this, is how do you weigh that? Because I heard you say in your live the other day, you're telling us that it's unsafe to protest, but at the same time, if we don't protest, you're going to put in something that's unsafe. So what do we do?
Yeah, it's knowing your rights is paramount, guys, and learning the difference between your rights and our so-called laws. I mean, our actual laws are there. Some of them are there anyway to protect us and to keep us safe. The old Plato comment, I think it was Plato, one of the old Greek philosophers, he said we don't really need laws because good people will do the right thing anyway, and bad people are going to break the laws regardless of what they are. So it's more about, we've all got a good conscience. We've all got a heart. We need to come more from there and come from the heart and use that conscience to know, well, is this the right thing? If it is, we've generally got rights to make sure that we can do that. Which brings us into the whole licensing and everything. Yeah, the license in legalese is making sense of lies. So we either have the right to do things or we don't. And what often happens is they deceive us into giving up our rights, and then they go, here, we'll sell them back to you in the form of a license. And this is my argument with the police. They said it's an unlawful gathering because you don't have a Form 1. I said it's not a gathering. These are people exercising their rights. It's a play on words and semantics when dealing with the police and dealing with the courts as well. And they're very good at deceiving and tricking you into it. And the problem is, too, that the police actually believe that they're right. But they understand a lot of this. As you guys would have seen from Mullumbimby the other day, we held them off all day and managed to stall them to get a media circus down there and to cause enough of a hoo-ha over it to get some coverage. It went all over the place on social media. any which way you can. And stall tactics are a great one too, guys. Just bamboozle them, especially if you know the law well enough. And sadly for the cops in Mullum, I think I knew it a little bit better than most of them did, and enabled to stall us time, get some more numbers down there, and get some good coverage on it. While I messed with their heads with some legal jargon, which is proper lawful stuff. And on the legal lawful side too, guys, legal matters are for dead fictitious corporate entities. Lawful matters are for that of us, the living. And that's a massive thing to understand as well. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, do some research on your straw man. That's what they're after when they arrest you and they fine you. It's not you. There's two of you. This is the birth certificate fraud, UCC1 agreement. I encourage everybody to learn a little bit about that too. Handy stuff to know in the courts as well, because all your fines and debts and everything are for your straw man. They're not for you. They're not for the living. And this is the difference between legalities and lawful matters too. And that's an important one to know and to learn a bit about as well. And then outside of that, we've got our rights. And again, no law has the power to remove our rights. They're inalienable. They are God-given rights, and we're born with them.
I think you're teaching people a lot of stuff. Like, we, as Australians, because we think we're in the lucky country and we're just going to go by what the government tells us and follow the narrative, we don't look into our laws as such. We sort of go day by day. And what people are doing, I can see in the comments, they're sort of waking up and saying, I'd never realized any of this was there. I think the biggest problem that people are finding, and you've heard this over the last week when we've been talking off air, is what do we do next? Because the problem, or what we were saying with Mullumbimby, is if we can get a good result in Mullumbimby, it could be where, if it's a legal result that we go through the courts, we can roll it out to other places around Australia, or like Mark Steele was saying earlier, what they do in the UK and other places, South Africa, we can roll into Australia. So we need some wins so we can then put it in the places in other places. And I think people are starting to think they need a ZEV in every town, because when these towers start going up into their town, they want to protest or they want to say no, but they don't know their legal rights. And we just don't have enough ZEVs to go around at the moment. But I feel like it's such a big thing right now that we need to fight. We need to say no. Social media is a good platform to get the word out to people who are ready to be awoken, but we really need to then try and find a way to spread the word beyond that. So I know you're working on some stuff, and I find that your knowledge is something that people need to know. Like, whether you start your own YouTube page or what you do, we need to hear more from you on what we can do and what our rights are.
Yeah, well, look, I'm looking at all the comments coming up. I can't see names though, guys. All I'm seeing is Facebook user from everybody, but thank you for the comments. Yeah, look, for some of the questions you guys are asking, start reading up on the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia. Most people are unaware of this too. We have two constitutions in this country. One's not worth the paper it's printed on. Our Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia, written in 1900-901, the Quick and Garum version, that's gold. That's got a lot of our rights and entitlements in it for here in Australia. We also have the Constitution of Australia, which is not worth the paper it's printed on. That's for the corporate governance that we call a government, that's registered as its own company with an ABN that trades on the stock exchanges and stuff in the States. And then we've got the Constitution Act, which is exactly that. Yeah. It's an act. The legal term of act is something acting or pretending to be. So in this, we've got all these pieces of paper called acts, and they're pieces of paper acting as law. They haven't been through the due process. They don't have proclamation certificates. There's no royal assent, no commencement date, and they haven't been read a minimum of 3 times in Parliament to be enacted as an actual law. And this was my argument with the police in Mullum the other day. With their COVID restrictions and regulations, they're not bloody laws. They haven't been through the due process. And this is also my argument with the 5G. It hasn't been through the due process to actually be considered safe. And when we're setting our safety limits so ridiculously high, it's pretty easy to comply with it. I mean, I've been saying to a few guys, it's like setting the speed limit out the front of the schools at 300 k's an hour. No one's speeding out the front of the schools. And they've done the same approach with 5G. We've set the safety levels so stupidly high based on bad science, bias research, and they're only testing for thermal effects of non-ionizing radiation when it affects so much more than that. And this is, again, part of the problem, that the scientific community are not in agreement on this. And this is part of why there's such a push from communities everywhere. We need to get that global scientific community with independent research that's not input or influenced or funded by the telcos, and use that science, because any of the telco science, there's a 50 to 60% discrepancy in the results coming from independent versus industry science. That alone should be alarm bells for most people, that that's the case, and that needs to be seriously looked at. And with our government gone on bloody holidays, as they like to do when there's an emergency, it's very hard to get this stuff put through. You know, our bushfires and our PM buggers off to Hawaii for a holiday, got the whole world in lockdown and pandemic, and we're all having meetings on Zoom and chatting via online and stuff to sort out what we're doing. Where the hell's our government? Why aren't they sitting in Parliament? And if they want to make these bullshit laws, get Parliament up and running, do the due process, and see how you go about actually making it into a law. Until that happens, guys, we've got the right to protest. We've got the right to stand up. We have many rights. And looking through again, guys, our Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia. That's what you want to look at, you know. It's a very different set of laws, and a lot of the side of our laws, which a lot of the guys in the common law circles, for example, that I'm had a bit to do with over the years, all of our laws are done under the Queen of Australia. We don't have a Queen of Australia. It's a fictional corporate entity. And making all the laws done under that null, void, and illegal, it's fraud. It's fraud at the highest level. Our entire system, legally and judiciary, is built on lies and deceit. And that's what makes it so tricky in the courts and with the police to deal with this, is understanding how deep that deceit goes. And the language of legalese just helps to make it even trickier for average blokes like you and me to actually understand this stuff. I've been researching and learning and doing this for 20 odd years. You know, I'm still learning. I still don't claim to be an expert here. I've got heaps more to learn, but it's tricky. Guys are asking about, you know, what court direction can we take? Well, we're looking into that, because the courts aren't really operating at the moment either. And it's everyone's on bloody holidays as far as any government and department goes. And as you'll be aware with your group, Matt, we've been with multiple groups I've been joining up with and trying to help them. We've been sending emails and letters to politicians and MPs and at local, state and federal levels, and to all the government departments. No one wants to answer our questions. We're getting handballed from department to department. Even the freedom of information requests we've made, oh, that's not our department, we'll send it to someone else. And then they go, oh, that's not our thing, we'll send it over here. And after you've been handballed 5 or 6 times, you end up back where you started. And again, I try to explain this to the police. It's disgusting. And the cops go, well, you need to find another way of protesting. I'm like, we have exhausted every single other bloody avenue that we have to get our voice heard. And the last thing we have is to stand up for our rights. And if required, when they're actually doing the work on the towers, get out and protest it, you know. And we have the right to do that, guys. We have the right to protest. And that's a massive thing to know, that our rights are, I keep saying it, no law has the power to remove our rights. And the government and our courts and the police didn't give us those rights. Therefore, they have no authority or jurisdiction to remove those rights from any of us. So do some reading, guys. Do some research. Join some of the common law groups and stuff on social media, and the Get Out of Paying Fines and Rego Mob, all them sort of mobs. Learn what you can. I'll probably get slammed for this one, but avoid the Know Your Rights group. Mike Palmer he's very knowledgeable, but he's great at making a lot of money off semi-accurate info, and he's barking up the right tree, but he's got the wrong goddamn forest. So there are other better groups like the CLRA mobs, the Commonwealth, Law Reform Australia. There's a lot of mobs there. There's an amazing brains trust behind some of these groups, and plenty of information there for everybody on how you're able to lawfully exercise your rights without getting in trouble. Those of you who saw the footage in Mullumbimby, none of us got arrested the other day. Because I knew what we were doing. A lot of the crew there were quite well versed in this too, and we're actually able to hold them off, avoid anyone getting arrested. We avoided a potentially ugly scene, and we didn't see the need in anyone get arrested because there was no cherry picker there to do the upgrade. There was no Telstra workers. So we were kind of a bit nicer to the cops and went, yeah, all right, we'll bugger off. We'll thin the numbers out because there's no work to stop. But with the phone list and all that the Mullumbimby guys have got and the vigil they've got going, they try and sneak in. There's going to be hundreds of us to send on that within a very short space of time. It's not going to be a good look for them. So if you're our locals, guys, and you're around Mullum or anywhere like that, ring up all the hire companies that hire out these big cherry pickers and warn them that if I owned a machine worth $500,000, I wouldn't want an angry town, a big angry mob, crowding around my machine worth that kind of money either. Another way to get to them, hit them where it hurts, guys. Go for the money. That's the only thing they listen to. And a lot of the campaigns I've been involved in, we can cost them, we can't stop them, but if we cost them enough money, it becomes no longer viable, and then they make their own choice to bugger off. And that can be a really handy way of approaching some of this as well. And especially going after the companies that hire them and supply their equipment and machinery and stuff to get onto them. The shareholders, tell them what's going on. Hit them where the money is. And that's another good way, a very effective way of lobbying, especially when our government and our regulatory departments won't listen to us. Go to the guys that pay them. Go to the guys whose infrastructure they need to do it. Hassle them. And that's another effective way of bypassing it when we don't get listened to.
I think that's right. I think what you're saying is all very, very much spot on. I think you may have a business outside of this by the looks of the comments, being the bushy lawyer. I feel like over the next couple of days, you're going to be quite busy up there. Obviously, the police are going to come back in numbers. It may end up being a numbers game, but it sounds like the negotiating is happening to an extent. I think the things you said with hitting people in their back pocket is a really good thing as well. The more that people talk amongst each other, whether they bring them into these groups or not to find the facts, because once people have the facts, they can then spread it further on. But what you're saying is true. We get stuck at a point where legalities aren't going through and other things. We will at some stage probably have to protest and be, when lockdown's over, go out in numbers and say this isn't right, because it is a human right to say we want our safety and we want the safety of our kids as well. But I feel like looking at the legalities and understanding your rights is a very important thing before you do any stepping out of any door anywhere anyway. And the information we're spreading is fantastic. And it's a godsend to know someone like you, and it's amazing that you are happy to share that with other people as well, because it is hard being sort of in front of people when you are looked at as going against, the norm. But people need to understand their rights, and I feel like it's fantastic that you're sharing that. And I don't want to cut you short. I might get you back on later on if you're still awake, but I've got a couple of people lined up to play some live music.
Oh, cool. All right, well, I'll stick around, mate. I'll be up for a little while, so I'll come and go another chat. Just quickly, guys, CLRA, the Commonwealth Law Reform Australia, they're an awesome mob. Get out of fines and paying rego, which is Ned Kelly that moderates. Awesome bloke as well, very knowledgeable. And look out for the Commonwealth and the Constitution of the Commonwealth sites and stuff on Facebook as well. There's some amazing guys on there with some solid and sound knowledge around all this stuff as well, and plenty for us all to learn from.
Brilliant, Zev. Thank you so much again. And as I said, if you're up in another couple of hours, I might need some filling, and we might be on the next video, and people might want to hear some more, because it's the knowledge that people need. And I feel like it's comforting to understand that we do have rights, even though we feel like they've all been stripped. We just need to be a little bit more cunning with how we do things, I think.
Yeah, it's just putting it eloquently and learning to not have the fear about it, come from the heart and stand up for those rights and word it properly. And it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks again, brother, and be safe, and I'll talk to you again soon.
All right, thanks, Matt. See you guys.